Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the pleasure to welcome Mr. Tony Garrett. Mr. Tony Garrett is a biologist and a master drum player, despite he doesn't like, he doesn't think he deserves that title. However,
not master. I'm a drummer, but not master drummer. I let people might tell me that, but I'm like, no,
Mr. Tony,
one day maybe
again,
I'll be master,
Mr. Tony, again, thank you very much for joining me under the Human Rights Tree.
Thank you, sir.
Today, I would love to talk about the Cherokee and the Choctaw Nation and the descendant of the freedmen. But usually in United States of America, in the mainstream, we are viewed as a Caucasian or Black African Americans, Spanish or Asian. But when you dig deep into it, for instance, when you come to African American, you can see a huge range of diversity. And to that, I just want to know who are the Cherokee and the Choctaw and how you view yourself in those tribes.
Well, my father's side of the family, we are descendants from Choctaw tribe. The Choctaw tribe were located in Mississippi, Louisiana, basically. On my mother's side of the family, I come from a Cherokee lineage of family. The Cherokee were basically, lands were in Tennessee and some parts of northern Mississippi. So the story is that my grandmother on my mother's side was deemed what you call Blackfoot Cherokee. Now, the name Blackfoot Cherokee is kind of a misnomer because the Blackfoot are a different tribe up in Montana. But the Blackfoot Cherokee were deemed that name by Southerners at the time because after the Emancipation Proclamation, slaves were basically set free. Now, this is not to say that the tribes, the 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, were deemed the 5 civilized tribes by the United States government. Why? Because they took on a lot of the American ideology. Number one, having slaves. The Indian tribes had slaves. They did not treat their slaves the same way that white Southerners did as far as chattel slavery. They allowed their slaves to marry into the family and to have children to promote the bloodline. The bloodline would be Black Indians. So the Blackfoot Indians were named Blackfoot because along the Mississippi River, that's where a lot of the Cherokee were settling. And the white settlers, where the white people in the South would call them Blackfoot Cherokee because they would always be in the river and their feet would turn black from the mud from the Mississippi River. So whenever you hear the name Blackfoot Cherokee, it's really a misnomer. Blackfoot is a different tribe in Montana that had nothing to do with African Americans. But going way even before that, just one thing I want to point out that long before the middle of the 18th century, in the 1400s, when America was discovered, there was a gentleman on the ship named Pedro Alonso, I can't pronounce his last name. He was African, who was on the ship with Christopher Columbus, who sailed to America. So Africans have been coming to the Americas for such a long time. That's North America. And in South America, they also were coming back even prior to that with the Olmec Indians. Olmec Indians are in Mexico. The Olmec Indians were linked to the Mande tribe of West Africa. Now, we're talking about 3000 BC. Now, people are saying, how did Africans get over to that part of South America? A lot of people don't realize that Africans had ships that far back. Egyptians had ships and Africans. You look at the distance between West Africa, and South America, there's not that much of a distance. Sailing across that part of the ocean is a shorter part than going across what the transatlantic slavery did. So prior to my family intermarrying with African and American Indian intermingling, the races between Indian and African had been going back a long, long way. Intermarriage had been going back a long way. And the reason why I find it so important, because African Americans, we as African Americans don't realize our lineage is not just pure African. There's very few African Americans in this country that can say that they're 100% African. Impossible. They're either mixed with white, and to even a greater degree than people realize, they're intermarried or intermingled with Native American, what we call First People. So with my particular family, it was Choctaw and Cherokee tribe in the South, because in the South, as you know, was slavery. And the 5 civilized tribes, like I mentioned, Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Creek, took in slaves, but they treated them a whole lot differently than the so-called white masters did. They didn't beat them. They just basically were there to serve the rest of the village. So
usually when you come to the history of slavery, the way we understood it often is Africans were brought to America and sold to white plant owners.
Right.
And is that view. So how did the Cherokee Native Indian, how were they able to get slaves? Did they went to the market and buy them, or what happened?
A lot of time, 2 situations happened. Some of the slaves ran away from their white masters, ran into the forest, and therefore they were adopted by the Indian tribes. The other situation where there were several individuals in the Cherokee, especially the Cherokee tribe, that had money, that had land, had maybe not plantations, but had farms. So they would buy their slaves. They would buy their slaves in the market. But again, once they got the slaves knew that they were going to be treated a whole lot better than they would be by the white people. So 2 situations. Either they were bought, or in a lot of situations, the slaves ran away. The slaves would run away from the major cities in the South, run into the forest, and be adopted by the Indian tribes.
In United States, at certain time, slavery was abolished.
Right.
That abolition was effective inside the tribal nations?
In the North, slavery was ended, especially in Rhode Island, Massachusetts area. Slavery was ended a little bit earlier than the 1865 Emancipation Proclamation. So in the North, especially in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, you had a tribe there called the Narragansett tribe. The Narragansett tribe of Indians took in African Americans because the white people in those part of the states, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, especially during the 1776 American Revolution, where they wrote the Declaration of Independence, a lot of the whites were saying, well, we have in our Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. So a lot of the abolitionists were saying, like, wait a minute, we have this in our declaration, but yet we have slaves. So they would let the slaves go. And when the slaves left, they would be adopted by the Narragansett tribe, and basically the Narragansett tribe in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And to this day, there are Black Narragansetts. I have several pictures that I will show you of Black Narragansett Indians. I have pictures of Black Choctaw, Black Cherokee. The only Indians that intermingled with Africans were people from the southern states and the eastern states, where slavery, the ships would come in to Massachusetts, Plymouth, Massachusetts, and all those areas, and in the South, where slaves would be shipped in from South America, Brazil, because the slave trade a lot of times brought their slaves in through through New Orleans. And then from New Orleans, they would be dispersed all through the South to different plantations. The big slave market in New Orleans, in Congo Square, you know, in the 1700s and 1800s dispersed a lot of Africans throughout the American colonies, but predominantly through the South. But a lot of them did go north, but a lot of the slaves were brought in from the East, from West Africa, straight to the eastern shores of the United States. So you have a lot of intermingling between American Indians and Africans. But the majority of the slaves were brought in from the South, and that's where the 5 civilized tribes, and again, they were deemed civilized because they were adopting the white population's attitude towards slavery at the time. Slavery is okay, so let's take in slaves, that type of thing. And those tribes wanted to be accepted by the American government, so they took on slavery. They even adopted some of the European customs as far as mannerisms, learning English, and becoming Christians. Being, the missionaries would come in, and a lot of the tribes became Catholics. So it was a thing. It was a big difference than the Indians in the West with the Navajo, the Apache, the Cheyenne Indians. They didn't have any intermingling with Africans because Africans weren't being brought in from the Western coast closer to where they lived. So you have a big thing. But there was a big shift in 1833, what they call the Trail of Tears. That's when the American government wanted to take all the tribal lands from the American Indians east of the Mississippi River. So you're talking about all those states: Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, New Orleans, Florida, Georgia. All those states that had American Indian population were told to move on the by the Trail of Tears Act by Andrew Jackson. 1833, there was a mass migration of Indians that were moved west of the Mississippi into the West, Oklahoma predominantly, Kansas, those areas. So the slaves that were part of those tribes moved with the Indian families. But there was one area in Louisiana called Attapacus, Louisiana, a small slither of land that was not deemed United States government property, where during the migration, all the tribes, all the 5 civilized tribes, would drop off their slaves in this one area because they're on a trail. They're being moved, and it's like, this is burdensome to have to provide food for us and for as well as our slaves. Now, granted, a lot of slaves were part of the family, and they did move with the families to Oklahoma. But this one area in Louisiana, Attapacus, became the land of the Four Winds Cherokee tribe. The Four Winds Cherokee tribe was a conglomeration of Indians that were Choctaw, Seminole, part of the 5 civilized tribes, were dropped off in that area. That's the reason why, to this day, Louisiana has a very, very large Indian population. And there's so many tribes in Louisiana of Black Indians, and so many names outside the 5 tribes that have diversified and have different names. So if you go to Louisiana and you talk to somebody from the countryside of Louisiana, they can say, oh, yeah, I'm part of this tribe. They can give you a whole lot. And these are African Americans I'm talking about. It's just that African Americans in the North basically don't know the history of American Indian and African intermingling. It's just something that's not taught in schools.
But when it come to you and your family, how were you able to know that part of your blood come from the Cherokee and Native Indian family?
2 ways. There was oral history from my mother telling me about my grandfather. My grandfather's mother was full-blooded Cherokee. On my father's side, I looked at the land that we came from. My father's family came from Mississippi, right in the heart of Choctaw land. I looked at pictures of my grandfather, looked at pictures of a lot of my family members. And talking to them, they said, yeah, it's been said that we have Choctaw lineage. So I went on the Dawes rolls. The Dawes rolls is a list of individuals set up by the United States government of tribal members, people that were deemed to be part of one of the 5 civilized tribes. And the Dawes Rolls was invented so that people could sell their land back to the United States government. The United States government, after the Trail of Tears, after the Indians were removed from the South, the United States government took their land. But then between 1883 and 1914, they said, well, we took a lot of this land from the Indians. We want to give it back. But there was a sinister plot behind it. They wanted to give the land back to the Indians just so they can say, okay, we're going to give it to them in allotments. And it's such a small allotment that you can sell it back to the United States government and people will get some money. So to do that, to be able to claim land in the South that was taken from your family being part of the 5 civilized tribes, your name had to be on the Dawes Rolls. So I went on the Dawes Rolls and I saw my grandmother's name, Eliza Garrett, and Robinson was her maiden name. I knew the date of her birth, the area, the county that she was born in, and next to her name, it said Choctaw. I saw another name on my father's side, another name, not only my father's mother, but another name on the Garrett side, St. Friedman. It said race mulatto. Now in the South at the time, now mulatto means, the real definition of mulatto means young mule. But in the South, mulatto was given to the name of people of mixed race, whether they were black and white or black and Indian. So I found my grandfather's name as well as my great-grandfather's name as well as my grandmother's name, one saying Friedman and the other one saying Choctaw. So I have pictures of my grandfather from 1875 standing next to his cousin. I can show you.
Yeah,
and so
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
My other question is, today you view yourself as an African American,
right,
in same time Native Indian.
right.
Are you accepted among the Cherokee Nation as a part of as a Cherokee?
Well, what happened in 1975, the Cherokee Nation, due to the fact that out of the 5 civilized tribes, they were the ones that were more westernized. And because of the Land Act, they wanted to grab as much land as they could. And so they were saying anybody that was a freedman of the Cherokee tribe is out of the tribe. So they kicked them out the tribe in 1975.
To that, who are the freedmen?
The freedmen are freed slaves. Slaves that were freed during slavery. Either they bought their own slavery or somebody bought them, an abolitionist might have bought them and then gave them their freedom. The abolitionists, as you know, were Quakers and people like that were against slavery. So a lot of times what they would do, they would buy the slaves just to set them free. So a freedman is given to the name of an African who was freed, who was no longer a slave.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was that the freedman would go and maybe go back to the area. If the freedmen were able to gather enough money through working, they would go back and buy the family members in the South. So a freedman can go to the North and make money, go to New York and make money, come back to the South and pay enough money to get his family freed. So with my family pretty much stayed in the South. And through the years that ensued, my family became freedmen because of their business savvy. My family comes from a long lineage of family that were butchers and grocery store owners. My father was a grocery store owner. My grandfather was a grocery store owner, and so on and so on. So any slave that was able to buy his own freedom became a freedman. and he can buy his own family back from slavery. Now, being accepted into the Cherokee were pretty strict with their membership as far as being a Cherokee, because they wanted more land for themselves. They didn't want to say, okay, well, these freedmen are coming in and they're going to buy up all this land that we could be getting, that a full-blooded Indian can be getting. So there was a big controversy in 1975. It just recently got solved, though. The United States, they took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court told the Cherokees that, no, we set up this program back in 1838, the Dawes Rolls, and anybody who's on that Dawes Rolls, if their name is there saying, even if they're freedmen, if they have 1/8 Indian blood, they're still part of the Cherokee tribe. So just recently, in the last few years, it was overturned, and now the Cherokees are accepting their mixed blood ancestors. Different for the Choctaws. The Choctaws pretty much accepted Black Americans as part of their membership, Black American Indians as part of their membership, and had no problem with that. Even to this day in Mississippi, there's a town called Choctaw, Mississippi, where they have casinos. The Indians were able to get enough money from selling their land to the United States government and from having business savvy that they set up casinos. So, excuse me, and throughout Mississippi, there's several casinos owned by the Choctaw tribe. So from tribe to tribe, it differs as far as acceptance if you had African blood in you.
Can you tell us a little, can you take us to the little factual background when it came to the Cherokee? What was the issue? Why they didn't want to accept African American Cherokees in their nations as the citizens?
Well, like I said, the Cherokee were trying to assimilate so much into white Southern culture, they adopted some of their prejudice, some of their racism. A lot of the Cherokees were very, very racist against Black people. And the other one was basically greed. They wanted more of the land that was being given back to them or sold back to them for themselves. And they would look at somebody and say, oh, he's too dark-skinned to be Cherokee. Even if that person had records saying that, no, my grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee. You know, so I've gone to somebody.
So who was able to take them to court? How was the process of taking them to court?
Well, it finally went to the United States Supreme Court. It went through the local courts, and it got all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they overturned the Cherokees from being so prejudiced against the Black descendants, Black American Indian descendants.
Yeah, but usually when there is a legal issue, there is a plaintiff and a defendant.
Yeah.
Who was the plaintiff? Who initiated?
Any individual that was trying to claim land given back from the United States government to that tribe, and that in that family name, they can be a plaintiff against the Cherokee Nation. So there's several listings of Robinson versus Cherokee Nation, Johnson versus Cherokee Nation. There's a whole list of names of people that would file suit against the Cherokee Nation saying, no, we are part of this tribe. And the United States government would say, no, we have the Dawes Rolls that to be put out in 1838, 1883, and these names are on here, so this is the way it is. So it was really controversial, you know.
So when you are accepted as a part of, for instance, the Cherokee Nation, what benefit can you have as a citizen of those nations?
Well, when you go to a powwow, you're accepted. And a powwow is a big meeting of all the Native Americans. It's a big event where they all get together and do oral tradition stories and a lot of the ceremonies. You're accepted as part of that. So you can go and be accepted, and there's no problem. As far as land is concerned, I'm not quite sure how that would work. My family's never tried to claim any land given back to the Choctaw, to the Cherokee. We always had our own land, and maybe my great grandfather went back and claimed some of the lands. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, those are the benefits. You can get land back that was taken from you after the Trail of Tears in 1833, and you can claim membership into the tribe and attend some of the tribal events.
But you as a descendant of those tribe, did you try to go back and learn more about the tribes?
I've done some research on my own, and I've had some family members that have gone to Choctaw lands in Mississippi, especially to the casinos. But they've gone there to the area and talked to the people talked to some of the tribal members in that area in Choctaw, Mississippi, and at the casinos. And they were accepted because a lot of my family members looked like them. Their hair was straight, their skin was brown, maybe a little bit darker brown because they had African blood in them, but they were accepted. But again, like I said, the Choctaw were a lot more accepting than the Cherokee were. The Cherokee were very strict, very prejudiced at the time. Maybe they've changed now, but Cherokee were very, no, we don't want these Black people here. But the Choctaw were like very welcoming, and you know, it's demographics had a lot to do with it also. Louisiana, Mississippi, a little bit more welcoming toward descendants of African slaves being part of the Native American tradition. But other parts of the South, Tennessee, Kentucky, they were a little bit, and they were part of the Cherokee tribe. So they were pretty much more strict with their acceptance of Black Americans being part of the American tribe. There's a book here called Black Americans. Black Indians. Very good book. It talks about everything I'm talking about, plus more. Very good book. Talks about how the lands were taken and how Africans were assimilated into Indian culture and what's going on to this day as far as being accepted. I've gone to a powwow here in Chicago on the north side at the Native American, not the Institute, Native American Center. Used to be on Wilson Street on the north side. And I've gone to a powwow up there and talked to several people about Indian culture. And they would say, well, you know, what part of your tribe are you? And I would tell them Choctaw. And they said, oh yeah, Choctaw, very accepting. I've gone to the Mitchell Museum of Native American History up here in Evanston and talked to several people up there of different tribes all over the country. And you know, I told them, I said, you know, my lineage is from the Choctaw and Cherokee tribe. And it's funny because a lot of the people that I would talk to were from the Navajo tribe or Lakota, some of the Western tribes. And they would be very much up on what the Southern tribes were doing. And they would even say, oh, the Cherokee. Oh, wow. You know, I tell them part of my family's from Cherokee. And they say, oh, how'd you get accepted into being a Cherokee? And I said, it was very difficult. You know, I never really approached the Cherokee about it. I just read about other people going through the challenge of being accepted by Cherokee. But with the Choctaw, since they welcomed my family with open arms, and like I said, the family history is there. And it's like I said, some of my cousins down south have intermingled with the Choctaw Nation there, and they've come back with information for me to thrive on.
Do you kind of have a number estimate how many people can be considered as African American with native Indian blood?
There's a lot, Alpha, and people don't know it. That's the thing. A lot of Africans don't realize that they have Native American blood in them. If they went back and talked to some of their grandmothers, if they were able to talk to their great grandmothers and find out where they were from, especially in the South, they can go on the Dawes rolls and look up a family member. If they know the name of a great grandmother, a great grandfather, or even a grandfather, they know the date of the birth, what county, what state they lived in, what county, they can find out that they are part Native American. It might be 1/8 Native American, it might be a quarter of Native American, it might be full-blooded. But African Americans don't realize that there's a large percent of African Americans that have Native American blood in them. I mean, when you look at the skin tone of an African American, You know, the first thing he says, well, you know, you ask them, what are you? I'm African American. And you go back and look at their family, look at pictures of their family from generations before. You see there's some difference. You say, well, why was that difference? Well, granted, a lot of Africans were impregnated by the slave masters, especially women. African women were raped by the white slave owners, and so the children came out. But in a lot of situations, the skin tone is different because they intermingled with American Indians. But like I said, the real way to do that is to go on the Dawes rolls, Dawes. You can go on the internet and look up the Dawes rolls. There's a long list from 1883 of names. You can look up a family member name, what state they were born in, what county, and the date of birth, and you can pinpoint your relative. And if you talk to other relatives, especially the elders, and say, well, what was grandma's name? What was great-grandmother's name? They can confirm that they have Native American blood. And then when they talk to other family members, especially family members in the South, they carry that oral tradition going on. It's different when people come to the North, come to Chicago, leave the South. They kind of leave the South behind and they don't want anything to do with the South anymore. But when they talk about things with family members, especially family members that are still in the South or from the South, they can find out that they have some of one of the 5 civilized tribes. And it's going to be any African American that's got Native American blood in him, he's going to be mixed with Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, or Creek Indians coming from those states in the South of the United States.
But through the history of this country, do you have any Black Indian organizations that have existed and are promoting the interests of Black Indians?
In Louisiana, there are a lot of tribes that are not part, are subdivisions of the 5 civilized tribes. I mean, there's so many tribes in Louisiana that are derived from the Choctaw, derived from the Cherokee, derived from the Seminole. And in Louisiana, they have names. Some of the names of the tribes in Louisiana, especially during Mardi Gras. If you've ever gone to Mardi Gras and you see the parade, you'll see Black Americans dressed in Native American garb. Those people are descendants of American Indian and Black Americans. And the organizations that they have in New Orleans, especially during Mardi Gras, are organizations that put on parades during Mardi Gras. They put on the feathers, they put on these large costumes, and they march down there. And the organizations like the Wild Magnolias, the Wild Chapatulas, the Golden Eagles, all these are Mardi Gras Indians. The Mardi Gras Indians celebrate their Indian ancestry during Mardi Gras, educating the people that we're Indian, but we're also African. And you look at some of these people and they're very dark-skinned. You would think that they're pure African, but they have Native American blood in them. Here's a picture of my grandfather. I don't know if you can see that very well or not.
Yeah.
That gentleman there is my grandfather. His mother was full-blooded Cherokee. You look at him, he looks like somebody straight off the slave ship. But Henry Martin's mother was Cherokee. She was full-blooded Cherokee, named Running Fox. And the oral story was passed down from my mother. Her nickname was called Tiny, but her Indian name was Running Fox.
I see. So, but taking your case, for instance, if you want to claim your Cherokee citizenship, what are the process you have to take?
You have to apply to the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. You have to prove that you have Cherokee blood in you by giving a family member name. You have to prove to them that that name is on the Dawes rolls. And then they have to adhere to it, because the United States government in 1975 told the Cherokee Nation, said, no, you have to adhere to the rules that if a family member is on the Dawes rolls, you have to accept them as being part of your nation. So the United States government dictated to the Cherokee Nation saying, you can't discriminate against these people because it's been deemed that they are Cherokee.
So can you give us a specific case in which the Cherokee Nation refused to provide a citizenship to a Black Indian, and the court in the United States was able to overturn that ruling?
Here is a picture.
Take it back up.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was in the wrong area. Here.
Yeah, okay.
Here is a picture of people demonstrating in 1975.
Okay, I see.
To the Bureau of American Indians, saying that the Cherokees were discriminating against them. So these are Black Cherokees that found their names on the Dawes rolls that were rejected by the Cherokee Nation. Okay. So they went to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and said, no, we are Cherokee. You have to tell the Cherokees to accept us. So there was a lot of families, and this picture is from 1975. But like I said, just recently, the United States government accepted these people, and now they are able to be accepted as Black Cherokees.
So what are the advantages you get as a Black Cherokee?
Well, if you want to go live on the reservation, you can. Being accepted by the Cherokee Nation. I mean, that's about it. I doubt if there's any more land that can be given to you, because this was a while back that lands were given back to the people, and or the land was bought up. And see, that was a trick. The United States government told these people, oh, you can come back and get your land that we took from you. But the whole process was that the United States government was planning to buy that land from these people. And then when they did that, they said, okay, here's a reservation you can go live on. We're going to take your land. So the reservation was set up for American Indians. I mean, there are a lot of American Indians that don't live on the reservation, that live in the cities, big cities. But unfortunately, for them to have the tribal connections that they have with other tribe members, they have to live on the reservation. Most of the reservations are out west. There's one reservation from the Shinnecock tribe up in Massachusetts that a friend of mine's family is living on this day. The Shinnecock were a tribe on the east coast of Massachusetts that intermingled with Black back in the early 1800s. So I have my friend's family, they go back and forth visiting, but they always go back to the reservation on Long Island, Southampton. And I asked them, you know, what's the advantage of living there? And they said, well, we're among our people and it's tax-free. They're not taxed because it's Native American land. So they don't have to pay taxes. Property taxes and all that, they don't have to pay that. So that's one advantage.
Okay.
But it's a poor area. I mean, they're out in the middle of nowhere in Southampton on Long Island, you know, basically deemed like a no man's land. They're stuck out there, but they have their own stores, they have their own businesses. But one of the advantages, they don't have to pay state taxes or federal taxes. But the poverty rate is very bad out there. I mean, people are very poor.
But what did you learn cultural-wise when you were trying to connect with your Indian ancestry?
Cultural-wise, I've learned a Native American, a little bit of the Choctaw language. You know, halito means hello in Choctaw. I've learned how to say, you know, what my name is in Choctaw. Drumming-wise, because I'm a drummer, I've learned a Choctaw rhythm and a chant that goes along with it. I have yet to get a Choctaw drum. They're very hard to come by. So that's one of my next missions, is to get a Choctaw drum and drum on this drum, this one song about Naniwaya, which is like the Choctaw Holy Land in Mississippi. There's a song talking about Naniwaya, and there's a rhythm that goes along as they're playing it. So I've learned that song, but I need the proper drum. And I can't do it by myself. I need other Choctaw, you know, the Choctaw, when people do Choctaw drumming, they do it on a large powwow drum. That's one of the drums. And that's several people on one drum with one stick, all chanting together. Hey, ya, hey, ya, hey, ya, hey, ya, hey. So it gets repeated like that. So that's culturally one of the things I've learned, but I would love to get with other Choctaw and do that. But in Chicago, the African Americans up here that are Choctaw don't know it. You know, I try to talk to some people and they say, hey, where are your family from? Just like that. And then I might ask them and it's like, well, I think we got some Indian blood in us, but they don't really investigate it.
I see.
You know, but you go down south, it's a completely different story. People down there know their family history. They say, yeah, we're Choctaw or we're Seminole. They go to Florida, which was Seminole tribe land. Seminoles are very proud people. So you go to Florida, Miami, or Southern Florida, you talk to what you think is purely an African American. You say, hey, you got any Native American? And they're like, yes, I'm part Seminole. And they're proud of it.
I see. In your case, when you come to doing a comparison between the Cherokee and the Choctaw, it looked like the Choctaw was more open to accept you as
Right.
a part of their family.
Right.
Where can we locate the Choctaw in the United States when you come to the United States?
The Choctaw land is Mississippi, central Mississippi, all the way over to the state border of Alabama. As far south as, actually all the way south, even through Louisiana. There's a Mississippi band of Choctaw. There's a Louisiana band of Choctaw. So the Choctaw are a very large tribe, and they're located in anywhere from northern Mississippi, central Mississippi, where my family's from, Greenville, all the way down. There's a town right next door to Greenville, Mississippi called Mount Bayou. Mount Bayou is a small, very small town. And they call it Mount Bayou because through this small town, there's several burial mounds where the Choctaw, years, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, even before slavery, buried their families. So you go through an area of Mount Bayou, there's a bayou. A bayou is a swampy area. But then you get to this area where there's big mounds coming out the ground. Those are the mounds where ancient Indians were buried. And Mississippi, being very proud of their Choctaw culture, is labeled, this is Mount Bayou, the Choctaw burial grounds. And now, I just talked to a cousin last week. I was in Texas last week talking to some cousins who are originally from Mississippi, and they were telling me now in some areas outside of Mount Bayou, near Greenville, there's some burial grounds that the Choctaw are claiming, and they're going to appeal to the United States government, or to the state of Mississippi government, saying these are our ancestral lands, and they're going to get them back. So, and they will get them back, because Mississippi they're proud of their Choctaw Indian heritage.
When did they settle in the Americas?
When did who settled in Americas? The Choctaw?
Yes.
Choctaw been here long before anybody else came. America is Native American land. First Peoples. There's several names for American Indians. First Peoples, indigenous people. Choctaw, any tribe, any Indian tribe, no matter if it's Lakota in the West, Seminoles in Florida, Shinnecock in Massachusetts, Narragansett Indians in Rhode Island. These people have been here from time immemorial. They've been here before Christopher Columbus. Reason why they're called Indians, because Christopher Columbus came to America He went to South America. He came to North America, and he thought he was in India. He was sailing and he took a wrong turn somewhere, so he thought he was in India. So he called these people that he discovered, that he saw, they were already discovered. He saw these people and he called them Indians. That's how Native Americans got the name Indian, because of stupid Christopher Columbus saying, oh, they're Indians. So there's a division among the first peoples or indigenous people saying we need to stop calling ourselves Indians because that's the name Christopher Columbus gave us. But the real name of Native American people or first peoples among different tribes, there's thousands and thousands of tribes of indigenous people in this country. So they've been here long before the white man. They've been here long before the black man. There's, like I was telling you about the Olmecs. The Olmecs are a tribe of people that came over from West Africa.
This way. Okay.
Look at the picture of this guy. Look at his nose. Look at his lips. Strictly African looking.
Yes.
This is an Olmec Indian statue from 3000 BC. They discovered this statue in Mexico and found out it was the Olmec people. The Olmecs were Mandi people from West Africa that came over from Africa that went into Mexico, that intermingled with the Taino tribes, the Carib Indians, and the Arawaks to come up with the Olmec tribe. And that's 3000 BC. 3000 BC, long before Christopher Columbus. So Indians have been here forever.
Why you think that narrative is not well accepted today?
Racism.
Because we often view the arrival of Africans in the United States through slavery. And talking to you, the point you are making is Africans have been here before even slaves.
Yes.
So yes. Scientifically, how can you prove that?
Well, the Olmec Indian, the Olmec people, there was an anthropologist by the last name of Van Selwick. Upon finding the statue, they did some genetic markers on it and found out that the statue was dated 3000 BC. They found out that the name of these people were Olmec. So this one guy, this anthropologist, went to West Africa. He looked at the demographics. He's like, okay, from Brazil and from Mexico, how much distance between West Africa and this part of Mexico? And he's looking at these people with full nose and full lips. And they're like, where did these people come from? So he did studies of anthropological bones structure of the Mandi tribe and the Olmec tribe in Mexico and compared them and said, whoa, these Indians are derived from the Mandi people of West Africa. So that's been proven by anthropological studies. Whether they did or not DNA studies on the bones or not, I don't know if they found any Olmec bones, but there's thousands of statues of these people that look like they're straight out of West Africa.
I see.
But when they looked at the bones and they just different features, structures, they said that the Olmec are derived from the Mandi people of West Africa. Different than the Indians of the Western United States. The Western United States have Native American people, Indians from the Lakota tribe, Cheyenne, Navajo. Those people are basically ancestors of Asians that came over during the land bridge, the Great Bering Land Bridge back in the Ice Age, when the countries were a little bit more closer together and there was ice where people would cross over from Asia into the Americas and then descend down into the Americas. That's how the Indians in the west part of this country, they have Asian ancestry. The Native Americans or Indians in the south of this country are intermingled with some of those people that migrated to the south, but also with Africans that came up from, like the Olmecs came up, and later on through slavery. And there's three main areas: the Olmec Indians, Olmec Black people intermingling with Native Americans in South America and Mexico. That's the first thing. Second thing, before the slave trade, Christopher Columbus, he had blacks on his ship that were navigators on his ship that came over to the Americas. Now, I'm sure some of those Africans that came over with Christopher Columbus escaped from him and ran off into the forest to intermingle with the Native Americans and had children. And then the third process was slavery, the transatlantic slave thing, because there were a lot of slaves that ran away from their masters that were taken in by the Native Americans. A lot.
I see. But you revisiting your roots and realizing you are part Cherokee and you are a part Choctaw.
Right.
When you come to the Indians, native Indians, often people like us, we see them as a native Indians. But
Right.
you being part of that family, how can you differentiate the Cherokee to the Choctaw?
The Choctaw dressed a little bit different. I have a picture of a traditional Choctaw family. Picture is taken here is a Choctaw family picture from the 1800s, 1875. They're not wearing the headdress like the Native Americans you see on the cowboy movies with the feathers and things. They wear hats, they wear clothing. And these are black Choctaw.
Okay.
Look at the complexion of these people. These are black Choctaw from the 1800s.
I see.
So they dress different.
Okay.
Their culture might, some of their traditions might be a little bit different. Language is different. The Cherokee language is different than the Choctaw language. Some of the tradition, everybody does a powwow, but the language is different. Some of the traditions are different. And the Choctaw played hockey long before it was called hockey. The sport hockey that everybody plays, they were playing it long before, just not on ice. It was the same thing.
So what are the different ceremonies they have during the year? Can you cite few?
Well, a lot of the ceremonies can differentiate because the Black Choctaw will carry over some of the African traditions as far as baby naming ceremonies, ceremonies for funeral ceremonies and things like that. But here's the funny thing: a lot of the ceremonies are very similar to the indigenous people, Native American Indians traditions. I mean, because it goes way back, and it hasn't been. Of course, it hasn't been written down, but it goes by word of mouth, oral tradition, oral stories about what we should do if somebody dies, what we should do if somebody's born. So there's a lot of similarities between traditional African culture, ceremonies and things like that, and Native American Indian. Very, very, very much similar traditions.
In this platform, you share a book called The Black Indians.
Right. And there's another book
written by Afro-Indigenous. Okay. But the first book you shared was written by William Lawrence.
William Lawrence Katz.
Who is William Lawrence Katz?
This is a guy that, I don't know if he was an anthropologist or not, but he did a lot of studies as far as into Indian culture and Black American culture during the 1800s. My mother had this book given to her by somebody that knew this gentleman.
Okay.
My mother didn't know this gentleman, but my mother had a friend that knew this gentleman. And this person was, gave my mother the book because my mother looks very, very much Native American.
Okay.
I mean, if you would look at my mother, you would say she's Native American, you know.
Was the author, was it a black Indian?
That gave my mother the book?
No, the author, the guy who wrote the book, was it
No,
hiding story?
he was a Jewish guy.
Okay.
A Jewish guy, I believe he's an anthropologist. He investigated, went south, did a lot of studies, and wrote this book. And he did a lot of field research. He would go into these areas and talk to these people.
I see.
His studies just wasn't, sitting at home on a computer, or he would go into these areas of Mississippi and talk to the people that lived there and find out their family history.
I see. When did he publish the book?
Oh, this book was published, I think, in the 70s.
Okay.
I believe in the 70s. But it's called William Lawrence Katz's Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage.
I see.
You can go on Amazon and buy this book. But there's another book that's just recent.
Okay.
A young man named Kyle Mays wrote this book, Afro-Indigenous History of the United States.
Okay.
Kyle T. Mays. This is a very good book.
Okay. So was it African American?
Yeah, Kyle T. Mays, African American.
Okay.
With he's got indigenous blood in him also.
Okay. By reading those two books, what did you learn that we, the people who didn't have the chance to have an ancestry of native Indians, or who didn't have the chance to read this book, what can you enlighten us?
Well, I learned
about
from
these
these books to go on the Dawes Rolls.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about the Dawes Rolls prior to this.
Mhm.
But when I read this one book, I said, the Dawes Rolls. So I went on the internet and typed up the Dawes Rolls, and the Dawes Rolls just shows you a list of hundreds and hundreds of people, their names. The actual Dawes Rolls are on the internet. So any African American, deemed African American, that's interested to see if he's got Native American ancestry in him, all he's got to do is go on the internet, type in Dawes Rolls, DAWES Rolls, ROLLS, and just search. You type in your family's last name, they'll come up with a long list of your family's last name. If you know the first name of your family member, you can type that in. You might see quite a few people with that same last name, but if you know the birth date of that person and the county they were born in, the state and the county they were born in, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be your relative. Because some of these towns are so small, some of these counties are so small in the South that you hit the jackpot as far as finding your family member's name being on the Dawes Rolls. So that's how I learned about the Dawes Rolls, was through this book, the Black Indians book. I didn't know anything about it prior. And my mother got the book. And by the time she got the book, she was kind of elderly, and she was like, this is interesting. And I would ask my mother, what did your father tell you about your grandmother? And she told me. And then I went back and looked at the names of my grandfather in this book and found his name and the area that he was born in Louisiana. And I knew the year he was born. And it said there, Henry C. Martin, Louisiana, 1848, something like that. So I was like, bingo. And then when I talked to other family members, I was like, was old man Martin born? And they said, yeah, he was originally born in this part of Louisiana. And I would confirm with them, especially with my aunts that are still living, my one aunt that's still living, what year was he born? And she'd say, yeah. And then she'd tell me, well, his mother was full-blooded Cherokee. I'm like, bingo. Plus, I had a family picture of my grandfather and his wife and all my aunts and uncles. But on the wall behind him is a picture of his mother. Looking at that picture, you're like, gee, she is. I mean, even though she was dressed in European clothes, looking at her facial features, you can see that she was Native American, full-blooded, not even mixed with black. She married a black American, and that's how my grandfather was. She married a freedman, put it that way.
I see. In many ways, we are, when you go deep into the truth, we are a big
Mhm.
family, you know,
Exactly.
we are a big family. And I
We're
kind of,
all we're all melanated people, put it that way.
yeah.
The
But
it's
are they teaching this kind of knowledge in our schools
no,
today?
no, no, not at all. I grew up not knowing anything about this stuff. Nothing. And even to this day, these kids are not learning this stuff in school. They're not learning this stuff. This is stuff that's not being taught in school. Basically, I mean, racism's got a lot to do with it. People don't want people to know their history so they can feel under the thumb of people who have power. There's an old saying, if you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know your history, how can you know your future? So this stuff is not taught in school at all, and especially nowadays where there's being so many curtailing of what's being taught in school as far as Black history or American Indian history. And here's another thing. Back when the Emancipation Proclamation, a lot of white folks were afraid of the intermingling between African people of African stock and people of Native American. They were afraid of that because, like, here we got people that are, very strong. Africans were known to be strong, working on the plantation, and the Indians were known to be wild, right? So they're like, here you have an intermingling of two people that are pretty mad at white people because American Indians weren't treated very well by the white population in the South at one time. And we know Black Americans weren't treated very well being slaves. So here you have intermingling of two people, one being very strong and the other being very wild and uncivilized. They were afraid of that. They were afraid of the descendants being people that they couldn't conquer. So they didn't teach this stuff in school because they didn't want to give people a sense of pride saying, hey, I'm Black American Indian, because they would say, oh, these people can kill us all because what we did to them. So there's a lot of prejudice and there's a lot of fear in letting that history being known, because they were like, well, maybe we shouldn't teach this in school because we don't want to give them a sense of pride. We don't give them a sense of history. We don't give them a sense of culture. The one way to suppress the people is to take away their culture, take away their history.
In that logic, we know, if I'm not mistaken, in the reservation they have schools.
Yeah.
Are they teaching that story?
That I don't know. I know in the Shinnecock tribe out in Southampton, it's probably being taught there because I'm in contact with that some people from the Shinnecock tribe to this day. So, and I talk to them, and I'm sure it is being taught there because the Shinnecock tribe has a large population of Black Indians out there. So I'm sure that it's being taught there, but on a wide scale manner, I'm not sure. If they're being funded by the United States government, I doubt it. Because everybody's being told what needs to be taught in school nowadays. So probably even on the reservation, they're probably saying, no, we're not going to let you know about this history. But then again, if it's oral history, oral tradition, how can you stop that? Oral history gets handed down, not in a book. So,
but personally, I know you for many years, and I always view you as African American.
Well, basically, I am, because my contact with the Native American part of me is kind of null and void. I don't go out hanging out with Native Americans. I only know a few sentences, a few words in Native American language. So, I am basically African American with Native American blood.
Yeah,
just like a lot of African Americans.
The point I'm making, are you kind of trying to bring a light um, on sharing, advocating what you are in full, because you are viewed as African American, but when we go deep into it, you are African American in one way, but in another way you are African American Indian.
Right.
So are you taking this because often they are not teaching it at school, and it's not well known? Are you taking any initiative to reconnect with other people with the same situation and trying to bring the light so people can know about you, um, you and your origins in this country? Are you taking any initiatives
I
about
take initiation when I'm approached by people. It's kind of funny. Sometimes I'm approached by somebody from India, a Hindu, or somebody from Pakistan. A lot of times they'll come up to me and they'll say namaste. And I'll go, no, I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of Indian. So I have to educate those people.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I'll get approached by somebody from Cuba speaking Spanish to me, and I'm like, no, sorry, I'm not Cuban. Then I have to educate them as far as why am I being mistaken from somebody from their culture or from their race. So then I give them the breakdown. I say, you know, the reason why I look like people from your country is because I'm this mixture of people. So those people get educated, and there's other people that look like me that if we get into a discussion, you know, just, you know, I'll ask them, where's your family from? And it happens every time. Their family's from the South. And if I find out their family's from the South, I'll ask them, do you have any Native American blood in you? And they'll say, sometimes they'll say, I think so. Or sometimes they say, yeah, you know, we're part Choctaw, we're part Cherokee, we're part Seminole. And I'm like, these people have found out who they are, you know, who they are, what their lineage is. But, you know, it's not taught in schools. It has to be done like oral tradition, like it was done hundreds of years ago.
I see. Do you kind of adopt anything in your regular life? Did you adopt anything from the Cherokee and the Choctaw?
An appreciation of nature. The first people, indigenous Americans, Indians, always have a connection with nature. The Choctaws used to worship the sun as God. I worship nature. Well, I don't worship nature, but I try to take in as much nature as I can. I appreciate nature. You know, there's always a joke about saying if you want to find out somebody's got Native American blood in them, ball up a piece of paper and throw it on the ground and see their reaction. Native Americans are very much into the environment, not polluting the environment. So the joke is, you know, if you want to find out somebody is Native American, throw some trash on the ground and see their reaction. You know, if they cry or they say, hey, don't do that, you know, you're spoiling nature, they might have some Native American blood. So my carrying on a Native American tradition in me is a full appreciation of nature, no matter if it's the sun, the moon, the stars, the ground, the water, the birds, animals. I have a full appreciation of nature. And that's very African also, if you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, Africans have a very, very strong feeling for their environment. So that's, I carry that tradition on. I try not to pollute. I try not to, you know, every day I'm out in nature as much as I possibly can. When I drum, sometimes I'm drumming outside on the lakefront, honoring my ancestors. And that's another thing that's in common with Africans. Honoring your ancestors. Meditating, and honoring your ancestors. Very, very important in Native American tradition, and very, as well as in African tradition. There's something very much in common, very much in common. So I carry that on by honoring my ancestors and appreciation of nature.
Did you share these stories with your children?
Oh yeah, my son knows he's part Choctaw. He knows he's part Cherokee. He knows. He knows. Whether he's going about telling people about it, I don't know. He's 32 years old now, so I don't know what he's telling. But as a child, I would tell him. And I share whatever information I find out about family members, pictures. Whenever I get a new picture of a family member, I do that. I have a picture here I will show you, of my family in Mississippi. Latest picture that one of my nieces sent to me. She colorized it. Where's this picture at? Here. This is a picture of my family in Mississippi.
Oh,
my
okay.
grandfather's always to the left. He's the very light-skinned guy with the white hat.
Okay.
And these are my aunts and cousins in Mississippi. And this picture is taken in 1930 something. So, and if you look at them, you can see that they have African features as well as Native American features. Two of my cousins in this picture, you would look at them and say, they have no African blood in them at all, but they are part of my family.
So what is your Native American name? If you have.
Well, that's a good question. I adopted my middle name, Tonechi. If you look at the prior interview we did, I was interviewed as Tony Garrett. I took the name Tonechi, not knowing if it had any Native American ties to it, but I looked at it as my musical moniker. I took it as a musical moniker because there's a lot of other Tony Garretts out here doing different things. So I wanted to be known as a musician, Tonechi. But when you look at it, Tonechi, the name sounds very Native American.
What does Tonechi mean?
Well, I looked it up online one time, and Tonechi somebody broke it down. I don't know who did it, but they broke it down by letters. T meant one thing, O meant something else, N meant something else. So it was all things meaning, T for Tony meant teacher. O meant honest. N was a naturalist, which I understand. The E was, I can't remember what E was for, but the J was for justice or just. And then the I was something, I can't remember exactly what, but it had a meaning that somebody, I don't know, somebody made up or what have you, but I took the name Tonechi because I wanted to stand out from other people with my same name of Tony Garrett. I mean, my real name is Anthony LaFonce Garrett. LaFonce was my uncle in the South, so I was given his middle name. But Tony Tonechi Garrett is my musical name. My birth name is Anthony L. Garrett, but people just call me Tony Garrett who know me. All my musical friends say Tony Tonechi, or they'll just say Tonechi Garrett. So,
Mr. Tony, thank you very much for taking us in this journey.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I created this platform is to seek for the truth. And
right.
Today I was enlightened with another truth related to your Cherokee and Choctaw family. And thank you very much for taking us.
Thank you. I just hoping that anybody who watches this, any African Americans who watch this, will research their past and find out if they have. Go on the Dawes rolls, see if they see a family member's name there, and research it and talk to other family members, especially the elderly. They might be in for a real surprise.
Personally, I will try to do more research on African Indians and learn more about the issue. And hopefully one day we will talk in the future more about this issue and trying to learn more about the whole truth. about this.
It's a very interesting subject. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Again, thank you very much for joining me
Thank you, Elton.
under the human rights tree.
Thank you, sir.
And have a
Have a good
great
day.
day. Bye-bye.
Peace and blessings.